And, we've seen this in the Middle East. If you don't confess to the exact crimes you're being charged with that are going to be used to the benefit of the controllers of the global super elite, then, well, they'll threaten your family. Look, Hasan, it's like this. We know you didn't do the shooting. We know you're a patsy. You know you're a patsy. Let's just forget we ever mentioned that. From now on, you're a terrorist. You're working with Pakistan. You're working with Al-Qaeda. And if you don't go along with that and really tell the cover story that we want you to tell, well, we're going to go murder your family. Because they've been known to do that in the past. I'm not saying that they're doing that and that's even happening, but this is what we have to look back. If we don't understand history, if we don't understand how things have been happening over these last 8 to 10 years, 20, 30 years, why not? We're not going to have a clue as to what actually is going on in the world right now, right in front of us, right in our faces. Walter Reed now painting the picture that he was a dangerous psychotic, which again, the question just keeps, you have to keep asking the question, why was he allowed to just stroll right into the facilities, armed with 2 handguns, allegedly? Again, I have to recommend Program to Kill by Dave McGowan. I'd love to have him on the show. He doesn't really like doing radio interviews all that much, and you can hear him on my friend Maria Heller's show. She does a once-a-month gig with him, as she does with me. But it's required reading. What you thought you knew about serial killers, what you thought you knew about mass shooters, what you thought you knew about murderers, will all just go out the window. You'll have a completely different perspective. And the combinations of almost every single mass killer that has been publicized within the media, they don't publicize the ones they don't control generally, all have these various things in common. And one of the main writing principles is incompetence. We saw this case where the convicted sex offender in California had kidnapped a young girl, 8 or 9 years old, I forget all the specifics, and held her prisoner in his backyard for like 15 years. She had children, and he had a little circus going back there. Big tent, circus tent. And investigators were going over to his house again and again and again. He was on, parole. This is a guy who's being watched as a violent sex offender, and nobody thought to look in the backyard. This goes on for 10, 15 years. Nothing. Again, we were just incompetent. That's why, Hasan. It's political correctness. We were just incompetent. We let Major Hasan slip through our fingers and he killed all those people. It could very well be said that the leaders of this country, the leaders in the military who allegedly knew that Major Hasan had mental problems, probably stemmed in from some deep hypnosis, it was just all incompetence. But aren't they responsible? Shouldn't they be responsible for these deaths? Because I don't see anyone out taking responsibility. We couldn't have known it would happen. Well, we knew, kind of. Walter Reed, he was a dangerous psychotic. Oh, now we're finding out he had, all these connections to Al-Qaeda, allegedly. And, you had these horrible statements, and he vowed jihad, but we just blew it. We just messed up on it. We were following the entire time, just like we were following the 9/11 hijackers, but they slipped through our fingers. Just like they did in 1993 at the World Trade Center Towers, where they literally gave the bomb, the working bomb, to the terrorists, helped them all the way along the way. All of this on tape, of course, as we've talked about many times, and oops, the bomb went off. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. We messed up somehow, which is just incompetence. So whenever I hear this, it really perks my ears up. I just can't fall into it. I can't believe it. Lots more to all of this Walter Reed bubble. I even hate repeating it because it's just so absurd, most of it. And we have no way of knowing if it's even true. Brad Friedman, who you heard the replay yesterday on our program, sorry we couldn't be with you, has written a pretty decent article on the Hasan affair. ABC News, Brian Ross contacts with Al-Qaeda. Network's investigative correspondent, he puts that in quotes, use electronic means to connect with terrorists. How many times does he have to get these stories wrong before ABC News cans their hapless and constantly wrong, quote-unquote, investigative correspondent Brian Ross? He's a good soldier. He is a good soldier. We suspect he'll be allowed to keep screwing up again and again and again and again, so long as his screw-ups result in lots of media attention. Little wonder Ross is one of the only broadcast network stooges invited on the Bill O'Reilly show again and again and again and again. Gawker's John Cook takes apart Ross's big scoop, which swept both the wingnut and non-wingnut media alike, cooking up the alleged Fort Hood shooter Army Major Nidal Malik Hasan's contacts with al-Qaeda. Those, quote, contacts with al-Qaeda, not so much, as Cook details. Turns out that Hasan's attempt to reach out to al-Qaeda were, in actuality, 3 emails sent to the imam of the mosque that Hasan attended in Virginia back in 2001, back when 2 of the 9/11 hijackers reportedly also attended the same mosque. Guilt by association. The cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki, has since moved to Yemen, where he reportedly has spoken out in favor of al-Qaeda. Reportedly, allegedly. And we had mentioned before, the guy is probably on the take. He's probably an asset himself. We're doing some of that work for you. The emails sent to him by Hasan, whatever they were about, Ross doesn't know. And the FBI reportedly did know, apparently didn't find they warranted any action to be taken. Oh, and the people, quote-unquote, connected to al-Qaeda who Hasan allegedly attempted to reach out to, Ross now admits there was just one, singular, not plural, and it was al-Awlaki. And then here's the favorite passage from Cook's excellent evisceration of Ross's yet again irresponsible coverage, proving, by ABC News' own standards, that Ross himself may well be an al-Qaeda terrorist himself. But without knowing what the emails are all about, can it really be known that Hasan's communications were an attempt to reach out? We just take their word for it. The FBI didn't consider them such. Ross didn't know the contents of the emails when he described them that way, but felt perfectly justified in doing so based solely on the knowledge that Hasan had sent the emails. And this has gone through in a mockingbird fashion throughout the entire crazy, phony right-wing media and left-wing. Because I saw Mr. Ed talking about all of this yesterday, too, just jumping right on the bandwagon and reading the script from his masters at the military-industrial complex. They asked Ross if he tried to contact this imam. Yes. So the answer is yes. He reached out to al-Qaeda then. To al-Qaeda? No, I reached out to him. Oh, I see what you're saying now. So now he's not al-Qaeda. Did you or did you not, Brian Ross, reach out to al-Qaeda? The subheader to Ross's story, by the way, which is the subheaders involved in this article, meant to mirror, is Army Major in Fort Hood, the massacre, used electronic means to connect with terrorists. Ross, it must be noted, is also the one who similarly stirred up the quote-unquote wingnuts and non-wingnuts alike with his completely incorrect report that the 2001 anthrax attacks, terrorist attacks on American soil after 9/11, which killed 4 people despite widespread, deluded, misinformed, wingnut amnesia, were tied to Iraq. That's right. Mr. Ross was the one that reported that the anthrax attacks were tied to Iraq, and therefore we had to go in and get that anthrax. ABC News, the liberal media, allegedly. Ross reported at the time, during the buildup to war in Iraq, based wholly on similar ties that the strain of anthrax used in those attacks, according to 4 well-placed, separate, and anonymous sources, contained a, quote, potent additive known to be used only by one country in producing biochemical weapons, Iraq, or maybe where they got them from. Maybe they all came from the same place, which we've had, Professor Boyle on our program. The strain goes to Ames, Iowa. The strain goes to Fort Detrick, which is admitted as much now in the final cover story of the lone patsy who was behind it, who, by the way, killed himself and now isn't talking. In either case, Mr. Ross was wrong. His unnamed sources for that report, likely the same unnamed sources he used for his cooked-up Hasan's contacts with al-Qaeda report. They were wrong then, and he's never bothered to retract the story or name the quote-unquote unnamed sources who misled him. I mean, you want to protect your sources because you want to keep getting the information, and you don't want anyone else who might be feeding you information, who wants to remain unnamed, to think that you can't keep your mouth shut. The unnamed sources, of course, were in George Bush's Pentagon. The unnamed sources were one of Donald Rumsfeld's men. That we can probably guess. The whole thing's fake. Just like this. Witnesses credit the second officer in taking down Major Hasan. Sergeant Kimberly D. Munley had been applauded as a hero across the nation for shooting down Major Nidal Malik Hasan during the bloody rampage at Fort Hood last week. The account of heroism given by the authorities attracted the attention of newspapers, the networks, and television talk shows. Would she get a medal, a bravery medal? Well, the story of how the petite officer and the accused gunman went down in an exchange of gunfire does not agree with the account of eyewitnesses, which nothing in this story really does. This story really does.